This week in Arsenal, Kylian Mbappe officially won't be following in Thierry Henry's footsteps. Links to two strikers heat up. Teams are reportedly circling for Eddie Nketiah and Emil Smith Rowe, and we give our winners and losers from the season. Let's get into it.
Maybe we'll have a good surprise for you.
Welcome in to This Week in Arsenal, episode 59. It is June 4th, 2024. As always, I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. Sash is on week 2 of his vacation, currently just enjoying some travel and some family time. He should be back next week, I believe. But in the meantime, once again, I've got two illustrious guests here with me. The first of which is Abdul, who you can follow on Twitter at Flaminiesta. Abdul, how are you doing, good sir?
Hey, I'm doing quite good. Thanks. Thanks for having me, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you here. And joining us is Mr. PME himself, who you can follow on Twitter at Marie Escobar PME. PME, how are you doing, my friend?
I am wonderful, my friend. I love your beard.
Thank you. It's really awesome to have both of you guys on. Although I did realize when we kind of set this up, you guys are a Brentford fan and Ivan Toney's biggest fan on Twitter, so there will be a little bit of Tony prop today. So I'm bracing for that, but it's really exciting to have you guys on. And, I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have. And that conversation will entail, kind of talking about Real Madrid winning the Champions League and then signing Kylian Mbappe right after that, and kind of how we can bridge the gap to that and kind of, reach that stature that Real Madrid are at. We'll also talk about some of the transfer stuff going on, Sesko and Osimhen, and some links for Eddie Nketiah and Smith Rowe. And then, of course, we will discuss winners and losers for Arsenal from this season. But let's start with the Real Madrid stuff. So, on Saturday, Real Madrid took on Dortmund in the Champions League final at Wembley. Was a little sad watching two non-English teams in the Champions League final in London. But after a really strong first half, Dortmund couldn't take their chances. Real Madrid, of course, are inevitable in these sorts of situations, and they went on to win the match. But I just wanted to get both of your thoughts on the game and, if that went about the way you expected it to. Abdul, I'll hand it off to you first.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of Real Madrid games in the Champions League tend to be quite open. In the first half, I think Dortmund had quite a few chances. Adeyemi ran through twice. Obviously, like the first time he was forced a bit wide, and the second time he had his shot saved. Dortmund, I feel with Dortmund, one thing I've felt while watching them throughout the Champions League is that they've got quite big spaces in between defense and midfield. So there was a lot of times where Real Madrid kind of just pinged the ball into Bellingham, and then he could just turn into acres of space, and they never really took full advantage of that. And Dortmund obviously didn't take their chances. There was a lot of moments where they could have had like a better final pass, a better shot, etc. And Real Madrid kind of got away with murder a little bit in the first half, and then in the second half they were a lot better. I think Dortmund had one real chance with Füllkrug. And then you just felt if whoever scores first is going to win, as it is in most Champions League finals. And as soon as Carvajal scored that goal, you just felt like Dortmund lost a lot of confidence, a lot of momentum, and then obviously, unfortunately, Matson made that mistake, and then Vinicius scored. So it kind of went the way I expected, although I didn't expect Dortmund to have like those like big chances with Adeyemi. and not put them away. I felt if they got some chances, they would have been able to put them away, just like against PSG. But yeah, that was the story, I guess.
Yeah, it's really funny because I think those two moments where Adeyemi really split the Real Madrid defense are something I'm kind of coming away with, thinking about how we could have used a quality like that in our team this season. I tweeted, Adeyemi was what we were missing, and I got, kind of rightfully cooked for that. But the main point was I just want a player in our team who has that lightning speed and is just another player that we can call on, maybe off the bench or start some games. We don't have to make Martinelli play 45, 50 games a season. But yeah, it's Real Madrid are frustratingly inevitable in Champions League finals. And I think they have kind of this aura that scares teams. And it feels like you're playing, 12, 13 men on the pitch when you come up against Real Madrid. PME, what did you make of the match? And, I guess was that about what you expected? Are you a little disappointed in Dortmund? How are you feeling?
To be honest with you, it was just a very strange, for me anyway, it was a very strange game. Like the atmosphere before the game going into it was just weird. I think with Tony Cruz announcing he was going to retire, for me, it kind of cemented, okay, they're not losing. Like I just refused to believe that on his last game for Madrid he was going to lose. So there was no doubt to me that they were winning. But Champions League's weird. Teams perform Champions League, they don't do in the league. It's a strange competition in some ways. And yeah, I mean, I think it's weird because I don't think with Dortmund you can say, oh, it's disappointing, because to even get to the final was just a massive achievement. Like nobody, I think, really expected them to get to the final. So when I watched the game, I was like, well, they're going to have to do a miracle, really, and it just didn't happen. It is what it is, isn't it? Really, I mean, they did the best they could, and again, Madrid get away with murder, really, but it's Real Madrid. This is what they do. They're the best club in the world. This is what they do.
Yeah, and kind of on that point, because I think the broader goal of Arsenal, just kind of bring it back to us, is we're trying to hit that stature. It's not just about winning a Premier League. It's not just about winning our first Champions League. I think maybe Mikel Arteta's goal, but definitely the goal of the Cronkies and the board at large is to hit that stature, to become one of the biggest clubs in the world, right? And I think it's safe to say that Real Madrid are the biggest club in the world at this point in time. They won a Champions League match. They followed it up with signing kind of the consensus best player in the world. It's not even the first time that they've really done that historically. And even with Fabrizio Romano spending the last few weeks telling us every single excruciating detail about this, they still posted, just that, no fanfare, just tweeted out, comunicado oficial, Kylian Mbappe, and then their website crashed from the amount of traffic that they had because of that. So, PME, how do you think we reach that stature and kind of take that next step from going from, a really big club that does have kind of an international influence and stature to, being like one of the biggest brands, the best teams, kind of an inevitable club on the big stage, so to speak?
Well, I think for Arsenal now, I think the name of the game is winning trophies. I think they've got to win something major, I think, for people around Europe to go, okay, Arsenal, they're one of us. They're one of the big boys again. Again, I think the strategy for the summer, they've got to get better depth. They've got to get a bench that Arteta actually can trust to go for the trophies. But I just think you just got to keep going, basically. I mean, it was kind of like putting your toes in water a little bit, I think, last year for the Champions League. It was kind of like, oh, they're back, Arsenal are back. Let's see how they do. And now it's like, okay, Arsenal, established team are going to be an established team in this competition, with them coming back to Champions League again this time next season. So they've just got to keep going, really.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is kind of just, I think, growing that influence globally. And like you said, it is about winning and kind of racking up the trophies. I also think that, the legend of Real Madrid has kind of grown so much and has kind of, spread all over the world. And I think that's something that Arsenal need to be able to do as well, right? And I think you do see that with kind of the fan, the multinational fan bases that we have. There's, Arsenal fan bases on every single continent. We're doing US tours every summer now. Hopefully, they start going to other places as well. As much as I enjoy them being on the East Coast, I think they should spread the love a little bit. But I think these are, and also the brand deals. They're doing these big brand deals. They're doing brand deals with, like, they're changing the name of the training ground to, the Sopa Reality Center, Realty Center. So I think, things like that, they are taking these next steps to becoming this big global brand. And I think eventually what ends up happening there is you have kids growing up in South America, in Africa, in Asia, who might go on to become amazing players, and they grow up dreaming of joining Arsenal the way that Kylian Mbappe dreamt of joining Real Madrid. So I think that's kind of one aspect of it that goes underappreciated. But Abdul, what do you think Arsenal need to do in order to kind of bridge that gap between where they are currently and kind of the stature that Real Madrid have accumulated for themselves?
Well, with Real Madrid, it's almost as if whenever you play Real Madrid, it's not just the players on the pitch; it's also the stature they have, the history, their lore. And then even when Real Madrid weren't as good as they are now, like say back in 2009, they were still able to attract Ronaldo. They were still able to attract, Kaká and Benzema, etc. So with Real Madrid, it's a lifelong process with them. When it comes to Arsenal, in order to reach that kind of level, you have to see Arsenal maintain like a high level of success, winning trophies, challenging for big honors, and just generally being amongst the best teams in Europe. And I feel we are on the cusp of that. Not on the level of Real Madrid, but on the cusp of just being one of the best teams in the world. And in order for Arsenal to do that, well, it's not only just with signings, also just with improvements on the pitch. There was a quote from Arteta, I think yesterday, or the day before, that came out that said about how, there are solutions he can look for within the club, within himself, to improve. Perhaps tactical improvements, perhaps utilizing players more. But then also there's filling in the holes in the squad. There's definitely quite a few, not many holes in the squad left, but I do feel, if you make the right signings, if you utilize a few more players, a few tactical tweaks, I feel Arsenal can, at the very least, keep challenging for them for the next few years and hopefully win trophies. And if they're able to do that, then even say like Man City, who aren't like a big club historically, they can attract top players, because of what they've managed to win, because of the money they have, etc., etc. So Arsenal have to do it their way, and so far it's gone well. It's just trying to get to that next level, and honestly, Arsenal are basically there. I mean, finishing 2 points off Man City is still impressive, but it's just being able to make it a tangible success rather than trying to convince anyone, because I know the squad is capable of winning the league. There's no reason for me not to believe that. There's no reason for me not to believe that they can reach a semi-final or a final even in the Champions League. But it's just about making it a tangible success.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think both of you are kind of hitting this point of, Arsenal need to be able to kind of get over the line in terms of winning the trophies, winning the silverware, kind of adding to quote unquote the Arsenal lore, so to speak, and kind of building up that aura around the badge so that whenever teams play Arsenal, they're not just playing Saka and Odegaard and Saliba. They're also playing, the history of Arsenal. They're playing the legacy of Wenger. They're playing, the People's Club. They're playing North London when they play Arsenal. So we'll see if that's something that we can accomplish over the coming years. But I want to move on to kind of a lot of the transfer chatter that has been going on, and we've got about a little over 2,000 of you watching currently. Thank you for tuning in. Please do follow the pod at This Week Arsenal. Please do like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel, and all that good stuff. But in terms of transfer links, let's start with the strikers. So at the beginning of the summer, I felt like it was all on the table, right? It wasn't only just the two that we're going to talk about, but it was Gyökeres, it was Tony, it was maybe we sign Rafael Leao and then move Martinelli to center forward. Maybe it was Xerxes, right? It felt like there were a dozen guys. Vlahovic even got linked to us again. So it felt like all these options were on the table at the beginning of the summer. But at this point in time, it seems like it's really been narrowed down to two guys, which are Benjamin Sesko, I think that's how you pronounce his name. We'll probably find out in due course, and Victor Osimhen. So, there's kind of been reports going back and forth saying we're readying a move for Sesko, or Osimhen's waiting for an approach from Arsenal. So I just want to get your thoughts kind of on the case for either striker that you'd like to make, and as well as which one you would prefer to go with at this point in time. So Abdul, I'll start with you.
So both are very, very good strikers on different spectrums, I would say. So if you look at Sesko, he's a prospect. He's someone who he's had a very good 2024. He's scored, I think, in his last 7 games for Leipzig. He's been touted as like the next big thing in football, in regards to strikers. And I really do see it. Like I think he's 6'5". He's rapid. He's got searing pace. He's very technically, solid in tight spaces. He holds the ball up decently well. And I think he's got like a lot of potential. I suppose when it comes to these two, it's a question of, do you want the player who's going to be potentially amazing 100 million in a few years, or do you get someone like Osimhen who is touted at 100 million right now? That's kind of like the question that a lot of fans have been asking back and forth. And you look at Osimhen, he's an excellent striker. He's been prolific for the past few years. He had one amazing season, obviously, in 22-23 when Napoli won the league. He scored over 30 goals in all competitions. He's just physical brute. When you watch him play, he backs into defenders. He holds the ball up really well. He's amazing in the air. He's got searing pace in behind as well. He's a much better finisher than people give him credit for. A lot of people often say that he's not that great technically. It's completely untrue. He's excellent at doing some nice layoffs. He can carry the ball well. He's great in transition. And he dominates the box essentially. A cross comes in and he looks to attack it, or he occupies defenders, allowing someone from behind for a cutback. And we know that Arsenal are very good having players crash the box for cutbacks. So if you buy Osimhen, the expectations will rise. I don't know if you can call it a star name, but I do think it is a star name. And I honestly do think Arsenal should, at the very least, attempt to get him. If we did sign Sesko, I can't complain, because this is a brilliant prospect. And I see the benefits of signing him now rather than, say, in a few years when he's like 100 million or whatever. So I see the benefits to both. I really do. I think both will give traits that we lack, which is like a lot of like steering pace and behind, but I think also in central spaces. Havertz has been very good up front for us, but he's not got the same like relentless speed and ability to just create a shot for himself. That's not really his game. He's more so someone who can peel away into channels and then feed other players, and he does that really well. But that ability to just running behind to dominate the box, that's something that I feel we lack. It doesn't have to come from striker, to be fair. Like, we've been linked with wingers in the past, but if you're going to sign a striker, I do think Osimhen will be the best potential buy. But of course, if you sign Sesko, there's a lot of positives to that as well. It's just that people have to be patient with him. He's still raw. He's not the finished article. And I would rather have the quote unquote finished article than not. But that's me personally.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of kind of the question that this decision brings up, right? Do you want to, spend like 50, 60 million euros on a guy like Sesko, who is probably going to be an elite striker in a couple of years' time? People are referring to him, even in some circles, as the next Haaland. Do you want to go get that guy and kind of take your chances starting Havertz at center forward for a full season, which worked out pretty well for us the last several months? Do you want to do that, or do you want to go get the guy who is probably, kind of the best available striker on the market currently, the win now option, and see if you can just kind of spend the big money now, go for the trophies now, and try to capitalize with where your team is at currently. PME, what do you make of that decision? And kind of at the end of the day, which player are you leaning toward currently?
Well, I tweeted this. I think I tweeted it yesterday that I actually don't mind who we sign. Like, I think either option, there's benefits and obviously disadvantages. To be honest with you, I think for me, I would, if you did, because of time, I'd definitely go with Sesko right now. I just think there's definitely a domino effect that's going to happen. Because I think if you get Sesko, I think a big midfielder and potentially a big winger comes. But I think if you go with Osimhen, I think it changes that significantly. And this was the point I was talking to George about in the chat. Like, I just think there's a potential, there's problems if you go with the bigger option. But I think Sesko, I think it makes sense for us. The big reports was like, oh, we want a project centre forward. This is what we're looking for. And I just think he fits the bill. Price-wise, age-wise, I think he'd be moulded a lot as well. And I just think it makes more sense for him to come to us than him to go to Chelsea. That to me still doesn't make sense, to be honest with you. That'd be my choice. If I had my personal choice, I'd still sign Tony, but that's me. That's me. That's what I would do. I still think he's had a bad season. He'd do really well for us. That's just my opinion. I still think that, jokingly aside, like I generally think he'd be really good for us, but it isn't going to happen. It is what it is. But yeah, I would go with Sesko now anyway.
Yeah, I think in terms of Tony, I think Tony has a lot of the qualities to be a top striker. I mean, he is a top striker in his own right. I just think the problem with Tony is that it's the pace, right? Well, it's two things. One, I think he doesn't really have the pace to kind of break games open, and I think on top of that, maybe the bigger issue is his age, right? Because I think he's 28 currently. So if you sign him now, we're probably gonna have to go back into the market in a couple of years' time to get another guy. And kind of with the frequency that this team signs attacking players, and kind of with the guys currently on the market who will go for 9 figures a couple years from now, maybe it just isn't the fiscally responsible thing to do. But I mean, yeah, he's definitely, when we first got linked to him, I wasn't mad at it at all. In terms of between Sesko and Tone and Osimhen, look what you've done to me. Oh man, I got Tony on the brain now. Anyway, between Sesko and Osimhen, I'm with you guys where I don't really. It's not going to break my heart either way. I think Sesko might have a higher ceiling, and he seems to me like someone who can go on to be a complete forward. A 20-year-old, 21-year-old striker under Mikel Arteta with those traits that he has, that's a really encouraging, exciting thing. He's super fast. He's got a great frame. He's like 6'5", I think. Really good ball striker. I've seen him score, some really great goals off both feet. And I think he does have some technical ability about him as well. So yeah, I think he has all the tools there to go on and become something really special. And I don't mind starting Havertz at center forward, for 18 months, 2 seasons, until he is able to take over and start. And in the meantime, I think he's still a better option off the bench than maybe, Eddie and Nketiah or something like that. So for that price point, I think it is a great deal. On the other side of that, though, with Osimhen, I have a lot of appreciation for Osimhen, and I feel like he's gotten very underrated by the public recently. And I think it goes back to to AFCON, right? The African Cup of Nations. I think a lot of people watched him not be the top scorer in that tournament. I think he got like 2 goals maybe during the whole of that tournament while Nigeria were in it. And just kind of started writing him off in terms of his goal scoring ability. And I think a lot of people don't understand that AFCON is a weird tournament. I'm thinking back to 2008 in the semifinals when a Cote d'Ivoire team with Kolo Touré, Yaya Touré, Solomon Kalou, Didier Drogba came up against an Egypt side with, Hamd Zaki, Mohamed Aboutrika, Issam El Hadari, and Egypt won 4-1 in the semifinals and went on to the finals and won their second of 3 in a row in terms of AFCON. So it's a weird tournament. The big names don't really matter all that much in AFCON. So I think it's a little unfair to judge Osimhen off that. But I mean, he's got that great speed. He is a physical, athletic freak. And even during AFCON, I remember Nigeria were just pinging balls at him at top speed, and he was, bringing them down at least within reach, and really serving as a good fulcrum for that attack to turn around. So, if we do pay his release clause, I think it's 103 million pounds. I think, that might be a slight overpay, but that's something I'm willing to do to get his kind of quality, to get a player like that who can take our attack to the next level. So I think that's an interesting option. But in terms of strikers, we do have one that will probably be out the door this summer in terms of Eddie and Nketiah, right? And, I think the most recent links are Fulham and Ipswich, and that's on top of Palace, I think, are also currently very interested in him. I think West Ham and Brentford have been linked to him in the past as well. So the current price, I think, that's being touted is 30 million pounds. And I just want to get your thoughts on kind of the feasibility of whether or not Eddie and Nketiah could go for that amount of money, or should we change our expectations, kind of based on, PSR and, kind of the historic spending levels of some of the teams that are involved here. So, PME, I'll go to you first. Is that something realistic to expect for Nketiah, or should we go lower or higher based on the amount of interest in him?
I think that's relatively fair. I think the problem with the sales and stuff, I think you look at some of our guys who are not really being utilised, and Chelsea can just sell players for just crazy money. You don't really do anything. Like Amari's not really done anything, and he might go for 25 million. We don't have the capacity to sell these players for a high price, and it's like, wow, is it worth it? But I think him, and I think unfortunately Smith Rowe, I think they're going to go, and I think the price is like 35 million. All in all, is probably fair in terms of realistic. I think that's probably fair, and I'm happy for Eddie. I think he deserves to go to a team and be hopefully the main man, because I think he's a lot better than the fans give him credit for. I just don't think he's the guy for us, unfortunately, and it is what it is, But I think 30 to 35 million, I think all in all for how we sell players, I think it's perfectly fair, to be honest with you.
Yeah, That's actually a good point in terms of the Chelsea thing. What do you think Chelsea are doing differently than we are in order to be able to sell players kind of for that upcharge that we don't seem to be able to get?
Magic, sales. Really, I don't know what they do. I don't know how they do it. I mean, it amazes me how they do their business. They like, so, they've had bad summers, and you're watching like, well, that was rubbish, and you spent so much money. But I'm always envious of how they sell players. Always, I'm amazed at how they can just get this value for players they're not even using, and just sell them. And I know they had the Saudi thing as well, but I mean, this report recently about Amari, it just amazed me. I'm just like, he's done relatively nothing. Like, he had a decent season championship, and they're going to potentially get 30 million. And I just don't get it. I don't get how they do it. I think it says a lot about Arsenal rather than Chelsea, to be honest with you. I think Edu is, and it's it's a big criticism of Edu. He can't sell players, and he can't. I think with the deals he's done, like the Rice deal and all that stuff, I think he's been amazing, really. Like, because that was just such a ridiculous saga. But selling players, he's. I mean, this is just my opinion, but he's useless. Absolutely useless. I mean, I don't want to go off on one, but it just sometimes you see the sales we do, and you're just like, how? How can we have it this slow? Like the Ramsdale thing that's coming up. That he might go a little bit just over what we brought him for. And if that was Chelsea and it was a similar situation, I guarantee you'd get double. And that's the reality, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know Sash would be thrilled to hear what you're saying about it. Sash is not the biggest fan of Edu, but yeah, you know what? That's I'll tell you what. Let's shift to that because I think that's a more interesting topic as a whole. Kind of this inability of Arsenal to sell players that if they were at a Manchester City, if they were at a Chelsea, would be going for 50, 60 million. And we're kind of having debates about whether or not these guys should go for 30, right? Nketiah, Ramsdale, Smith Rowe, I'll throw Reece Nelson in there as well. For some reason, I think we're kind of just in a mentality where we're lowballing ourselves in terms of what we should expect. And like you said, Edu, while he is great at getting signings over the line, I think historically he's been found wanting in terms of kind of just extracting value from players that we have. So Abdul, I kind of want to get your thoughts on that topic as a whole. Why are we failing to do that when we have, I think, some very objectively valuable players? And what can we do to fix that?
Historically, I think we mainly struggled due to a very unique situation, which Eddie kind of alluded to before, which was about how we had a lot of players on high wages and either long contracts or they just want to stay until the end of their contracts. You look at like Mustafi, Socrates, Ozil, I guess, as well. Excuse 1 second. Hold on.
Oh no. Oh,
well, so yeah, I'll kind of jump in here. So, Abdul's back.
He's back.
Oh, no, I said give me 1 second. Yeah, that's why. So,
literally 1 second.
It was my brother was knocking on the door.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But what was I going to say? Yeah, so there was a period where we were struggling to sell players because mainly because we had a lot of fringe players that just didn't have much value. And I understand during that period, I wasn't complaining much that we weren't getting money for like Mustafi, for example, or perhaps like guys like Socrates, for example. But over the past couple of years, like the last 2 years, I would say, we haven't extracted enough value. And this kind of extends to like the academy. So if you look at Man City, they've sold a lot of players that were in the academy for like, I think like they sold Trafford for almost 20 million to Burnley. They sold a few players to Southampton. In fact, I think Southampton got promoted and they had Howard Bellis in their team. I think there's a buy option if they got promoted, which they did. So they've activated that now, which means City get like 15 odd million, I think. and they've been able just to extract that kind of money. And I don't feel we've utilized our academy well enough for that either, in terms of making sure that these academy players definitely believe there's a clear pathway. For some of them, like with Nwaneri, I feel like he knows, okay, I'm going to be in the first team. But with a few others, like Coach Dubry, for example, who's like linked with the move out, we haven't utilized them enough. And that's also caused, I think, most clubs to think, you know what, we can wait out Arsenal. We don't need to pay 10 million for this guy, 50 million for this guy now. We can just wait. I do think it might change this summer to an extent, because you asked the question earlier, like, is 30 million for Ketia too much? I think that's the bare minimum I would accept for him to leave. If he left for any less than 30 million, I'll be quite enraged, because this is a very good striker, a very good Premier League level striker. He's been quite good for Arsenal. Obviously, there are limitations to his game, which is the reason why he hasn't gone up a level and staked a claim to stay at Arsenal. But leaving Arsenal is not the end all. It's not a criticism or a bad thing. You know, if Reece Nelson leaves at the end of the season, or at the end of this summer window, to a Brighton, for example, for 25 million, I would say, well done, Arsenal. You sold him for good money. His time here is unfortunately done, and you got good money out of him. So hope he has a good time at Brighton. That's what I'll be feeling. With like Nketiah, 30 million is about what I would expect. Probably similar with Smith Rowe. If we sold him for 25, I probably would be reluctantly accepting of it. But with Smith Rowe, I do feel that if we did sell him, I would prefer we get a midfielder of that ilk to come in, because we haven't utilized him enough. I feel like last season there were moments we could have used him, maybe off the bench, maybe give him a star hero there. Same thing with Vieira, but I don't see him leaving anyway. So it's just a case of just utilizing these players to the point where they feel, okay, I've played, but I'm not played enough. Rather than someone like Nketiah, who's probably thinking, this kind of the year, I haven't started a game. What would that do for me? And that's the big question that I have. Whether can we extract as much value now? Time will tell. I'm going to see how this summer window goes. And if we can sell Eddie for like 30, 35, ideally, even at 30 million, fine. If we have to sell Smith Rowe, we're looking upwards of 25 million, 30 million, hopefully. Reece around that kind of fee, 20 million-ish. If we sell players with like decent values, also Ramsdale as well, but I feel with Ramsdale we can just say, you know what, give us like 35 million or something like that. We can say that because he's on a long-term contract. Even if he's unhappy, clubs know that, okay, he's unhappy. They already know that. So if you want him, you're going to have to pay up. We're not going to sell him for 50 million or whatever. I think it would make more sense for us to just say, you know what, if you want him, here's the price tag. Meet it or don't. And if we do that, and if we get good value, that'll probably change the perception around Edu in regards to sales, around Arsenal in regards to sales. But it's just annoying because I prefer if Arsenal had a good reputation. Well, reputation too, I guess. But yeah, if they had a good rep in the market for sales, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So now is the time to actually like make that reputation clear.
Yeah, and I think it's a great time to fix that reputation, because you're talking about 4 players in Ramsdale, Smith Rowe, and Kedia Nelson who, they're all homegrown, they're all English. I think I'm not sure if Nelson's ever played for the national team, but I think the other 3, at least, well, definitely in Kedia and Ramsdale, they're England internationals. Nelson and Smith Rowe
has as well.
Smith Rowe has as well.
Yeah, I think he scored on his debut or his second appearance against that Saturday.
Yeah. So 3 of them are full internationals. And these are guys who have featured plenty for Arsenal over the years. Maybe not so much recently, but these are guys who have all shown that they have Premier League experience, Champions League experience. They are, at the very least, kind of accustomed to playing at this level of the game. So yeah, I don't think you should be selling those 4 players and not cracking 100 million to be quite honest. I think that's the bare minimum. And these are guys that we really don't need to sell as well. Um, Ramsdale and Nketiah, I think, are on long-term contracts. Smith Rowe and Nelson, I think those deals run out a little sooner, maybe in like 1 or 2 years, but
2026. I think for both of them, definitely for Rowe.
Yeah, so we're at the two. I think also we're at the 2-year mark for Nelson as well. So the only problem with maybe a Nelson is that he's on 100K a week, right? But it seems that they're both content to stay at Arsenal, which might be something working against us in terms of how sellable they are. But kind of the point is these are players who should be going and making money for Arsenal if we do decide to sell them, and these are situations that we should be leveraging when teams try to come in for them. It's especially with Nketiah and Smith Rowe, where we have 3, 4, 5 different teams who have shown interest in their services. So we'll see what happens there, but it is just kind of interesting to kind of talk about this conversation around what we should expect in terms of extracting value for our players. So let's come to kind of the second part of the pod here, where we're going to talk about winners and losers from this season for Arsenal. And I'm really looking forward to the answers that you guys have for this. So for the viewers, for the listeners, winners are basically players who kind of walk away from the season having increased in stature, or kind of they look better in the eyes of Arteta, or something has improved in their situation, in their perception. And then losers are teams who kind of come away and we're looking at them differently. Maybe they've fallen down the pecking order. Maybe it's pretty clear that they're not of as much use to us as maybe we had hoped. Things of that nature. So PME, I'll hand it to you first for your winner. Who do you have as an Arsenal winner for the 23-24 season?
I've been thinking about this since yesterday, since we talked about doing this podcast. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think the winner of this season, my personal opinion, is David Raya. I think he's the winner of the season. I think the big part of me that says this is because I think when the news had come out, we were going to sign him. I think it was a big part of the fan base that were like, "Well, this is strange. Like, why are we doing this?" I mean, like I was just like, "What? Why are we doing this?" And I know he's had hiccups throughout the season, but I think as it went on, I think he really established himself as okay. The back four, really confident in him. He had some really great performances, I think, as well. And it's a weird like answer to your question, but I have to think of the perception before and after the season. Like now, I think it for me solidified as number one. I don't think there's even a debate anymore. That's it. I mean, there was a big debate about this. It's like, oh, what about Ramsdale? And I think now it's like, oh, where's Ramsdale going to go? That's it. And that's, to me, why he's the winner of this season.
That's a really good one. I'm actually really glad that you picked that one because I'm working on a video for the YouTube channel where I'm basically grading all the players from this season, and I'm doing research for the David Raya section of this. And I was literally last night, I was kind of looking up some of his stats, and he finished the season number 1 in Europe's top 5 leagues for crosses claimed or stopped. At one point, he was leading it by a fair margin, and he kind of ended up only finishing first by 0.1%. But, point still stands. He was the best in Europe at stopping crosses into the area, which kind of shows that he has that kind of command of the box, has that trust of the defenders. And then on top of that, he had the 6th highest height of defensive action in Europe, which basically means that, he was really, really high up, really far from goal whenever we had the ball, was kind of ready to spring and sweep if teams tried to kind of play over us. And that kind of helps us compress the pitch, make it smaller, which in turn kind of makes it easier for us to play our game offensively and defend in the event that we lose the ball. So that's a great choice because you're right. He came in and there was a lot of initial doubt from myself included, and he won us all over, won the Golden Glove, and there's not really any, any contesting of the fact that he's our number one. Abdul, thoughts on that, and who's your winner?
Yeah, Raya's actually a very interesting pick. Yeah, he definitely is one of the winners of the season. As some people know, obviously, I support Brentford as well, and I've watched David Raya for many years. And I've always felt this is a guy who, not always, but I think the past few years I felt this is a guy who can play in the Champions League and hold his own. And he started the season a bit shaky. And I think around December, January is when he finally started to, stake his name for the position and actually get into completely error free form. I think after that Luton game, he was pretty much great for the rest of the season. I think his traits like at Brentford, I always felt like, wow, his cross claiming is impeccable for a goalkeeper of his height. Like there'll be free kicks where there's a deep free kick from the left hand side, and it'll be swung in, and then he'll go over to the other side of the box and just grab it, and then just spring a counter attack like he's done with Arsenal. And it always amazed me because I was just like, there are goalkeepers who are 3-4 inches taller, or 5 inches taller, who they won't be that brave as he is. And I think that's why I tend to love him so much, because he's so brave in everything he does. So yeah, he's won over a lot of Arsenal fans, and I'm happy for him. In regards to my winner, I actually would pick Trossard for my winner. Now it's a bit of a strange one because his standing in the Arsenal fan base was pretty much high from the beginning. I know there was a bit of a fallout from the Mudryk saga, but pretty much I think after his first couple of games, I think fans were more or less like on board with him. And he was just racking up assist after assist. But I always felt this guy's a very good finisher on both feet. He's very efficient with these shots. He tends to just blast them as you see in the season. And I'm glad that this season he's shown to everyone just how good a finisher he is, how efficient he is, the way he used the ball. All of those things are traits that I really like in him. Obviously, there's some traits that I wish was a bit faster, for example, or I wish he was maybe a bit more robust against contact. But he's played well on the left flank. He's done as well as he could have done there. He's played well from as a false nine. He's played in midfield, and it hasn't quite worked out. But I was open to it before seeing him there. And I think he's definitely the winner. And especially in the run-in, he's been very prolific, scoring a lot of key goals, opening goals. He's been a very good sub throughout the season. So yeah, I'm more than pleased with his form, and I think he's definitely been the winner for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I think he finished with 16 goals in all competitions.
17 even.
17, yeah, 17 goals all competitions. I think he also had 2 assists there as well. That's a really good pick, and I think Trossard kind of enters this season as perhaps our starting left winger. So we'll see kind of what Martinelli has to say about that. But I think my winner on the season is Kai Havertz. And Havertz has had a really interesting story at Arsenal this season, where he came in from Chelsea, £65 million for the transfer fee, and then he walked in, our highest paid player at the club. People were freaking out, myself included. I've had several moments this season where I kind of asked the question, why did we invest this money in Kai Havertz? And, he's finished the season now with 21 goals and assists. And it's really interesting because I think if it hadn't been for Timber getting injured, then we might not be looking at him as a winner. Because I think Timber playing at left back might have been the key to, the left center mid position kind of working as a second striker. But I'm just not sure if Jesus was maybe the guy for him to play off of. I don't know. But kind of he spent the first half of the season kind of okay, middling at left 8, and then we moved into center forward, and I think outside of Erling Haaland and Ollie Watkins, he might have been the best center forward in the Premier League this season. he was scoring left and right. He was scoring in big games against Spurs, um, assisting against United, assisting against City, scoring twice against Chelsea. I think that's probably my favorite moment of the season, honestly. Um, so yeah, he came in and really proved a lot of the doubters wrong, right? And he also has this kind of mentality about him, this aura, right, where um, he's a big competitor and also steps up in the big moments. I feel like kind of maybe one of the weaknesses of this Arsenal team over the last couple of years has been a tentativeness and kind of a little bit of self doubt when we do play those big games, when we do kind of reach stages for the first time. You saw that against City last season when we kind of played that title decider at the Etihad. You saw that when we played Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals of the Champions League this season. There was a little bit of apprehension there, of a little bit of uh, just not being sure of themselves, a little lack of confidence. Havertz doesn't have that. Havertz, I think, plays with bravery. I think he's very used to playing in those situations, and he showed it over and over again. And now he walks away as our starting center forward. He's all but assured that Nketiah is probably out the door this summer. I think he's also put Jesus' place into question. And he's probably one of the most trusted players on the team now. And, so we've gone from, hating him and, kind of people jumping into his mentions every time he posts something to, now kind of fangirling over pictures of him on vacation with Odegaard. So big winner this season, and PME Abdul, thoughts on Havertz?
Do you want to go first, Abdul?
Yeah, okay, yeah, cool, yeah. I actually knew you were gonna pick Havertz, Sham. So as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, I knew it.
What gave it away?
I don't know. I just had an inkling, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just had the feeling like, oh, you know what, he's gonna pick Havertz, but
fair.
yeah, but yeah. Havertz has had such a bumpy season. It's been so up and down, and the thing is, a lot of fans were just like, "This is a bad player. What's going on?" With me, I was thinking, I don't mind him. I think he's a good player, but why are we signing him? Like, I felt there were other kind of profiles that we should have gone after. I didn't feel we needed a striker. So when people were saying, "Oh, you can play up front," I was thinking, not this summer. Next summer, we can go for a striker, like now. And in terms of midfield, I mean, I felt he would struggle as a left A. I never felt he would be. I never thought that was his position. And I think also at the start of the season, this isn't his fault, but obviously there was a bit of a problem with Odegaard's positioning. So like Odegaard was playing very high up the pitch, and then when he started dropping a bit deeper, and Havertz was the 8 that was further forward, we actually had a quite good balance. I think Arsenal has also forget that during December, I thought we played really well, but because we lost 3 games during that month, and then February onwards, we were having Havertz up front, or there was a brief period where we had Trossard as a false nine and Havertz playing in midfield, but he was kind of pushed forward alongside him, and I think it actually really worked quite well. So it's not a simple case of don't ever play him as a left 8. It's more so a case of don't play him as a left 8 with Odegaard pushing forward. Don't play him as a left 8 with the dynamics that he had. There are ways to play him there and actually get the best out of him. I don't think striker is the only position for him. But one thing I've really learned about him is that if you see during the running, the goals, the assists, the performances, I feel like he rises with the occasion. And that's a very valuable trait, especially for a player that perhaps just hasn't shown that kind of aggression. That's one thing I really want more from it, like just a bit more purpose with runs or purpose with the final ball, the final touch. But he's getting there. And in the running, he showed most of the traits that I look for. And I've gained quite a lot of respect for him. I quite like him more now. But I think it's more so a case of use him correctly, get the dynamics around the team right, especially in the left side. And I think next season he can be even better, hopefully. And I thought also, I hope that as much as we're proud of him for his performance in the run-in, I want to see him doing that from August onwards rather than February onwards. I want to see how well he plays like at the beginning of the season, next season, and see whether or not he can kind of show what he's capable of when the stakes aren't incredibly high. But if he does that really well, then I can't really have any complaints, because I do see now the traits in him, like he's moving into the box. He can play off a striker. He can be the striker. He's quite good in the air. All those traits are traits that I felt we lacked, but I was thinking that's more of a long-term thing, not something I'll go for now. But obviously, as I just thought, he's available right now. He can give us those traits, get him in right now. And I'm kind of weirdly happy that we got him, even though we could have gone about it a different way. But I can't really complain now. I'm quite happy with him. So
yeah, fair enough. PME.
I have a platform to now say my conspiracy theory after all these months about Havertz and the signing of why we signed him. I will never forget when, I think was it Alex Goldberg, he tweeted that we wanted him. I just couldn't believe it. But I still think, I know with Timber, it's a little hard to kind of, because I think the idea would have been Timber playing and then he would have been in midfield. But there's a big part of me that honestly thought with this signing, why we signed him is because my conspiracy theories is that I think Jesus is quite badly injured still with his knee. And I think the idea with the Havertz signing was, okay, to sign him, we're going to say, oh, he's going to play in his position, he's going to play midfield. But I think there's a big part of that. And I know he said about, he play multiple positions, but I think there was a big part of that signing where it was like, if Jesus is really badly injured still, he can play up front. And I think that was a big part of why we signed him. And to be honest with you, I mean, I can't really see how that isn't true. Because if you look at the season for Jesus, which, a lot of people have not really spoken about, didn't really do anything, really. I mean, what can you think of Jesus this season? They didn't really do much. And I think that was a big part of why we signed him. But I really think you have to give him a lot of credit, Havertz. I think he did so well this last bit of the season, to the point where everyone's like, oh yeah, he's, a lot of people trust him now. GP, I love him to death. I know he wasn't a big fan of Havertz, and I could tell bit by bit he was starting to like him. For me, I think he deserves a lot of credit. He is a winner, 100% a big winner from the season. I think he's done so well to come up and play up front and score and be a big asset to the team now. And I'm just curious to see what he does next season. I think for me, and I was going to say this with the Sesko stuff we were talking about, but a big reason why I would sign Sesko probably over Osimhen is because, the midfield stuff of Havertz, I'm still 50-50 on. I think the Villa game is going to really scar me for a long time, because not that Havertz was necessarily bad, I don't think, but, he played so well as a centre forward for the last 6 games running up to that game. And to put him in midfield, it made me just go, well, why have we done this? Is this, should we even do this again in the first place? And so it's a big worry, but I think that's why Sesko signing would be great for Havertz, because you rotate up front, and I don't think there'd be so much pressure. With Osimhen, I think it would mean Havertz definitely playing in midfield. But yeah, Havertz, really curious to see what he does next season. I'm really curious about it.
Yeah, on Jesus, I think that is an interesting point, because he finished with 8 goals, 8 assists in all competitions this season, which is okay, not what you want from your number 9. Just kind of looking at the games he's featured in, there is this pattern where he'd miss a couple games and then he'd play for a few weeks, and then he'd miss a few games, and then he'd play for several matches, and then he'd miss a few more weeks, and then the back half of the season was just us resting him, playing him a few games in a row, resting him, playing him in a few games in a row. And a lot of these games at the end of the season, he's coming off the bench as well. So it I would say we were making a concerted effort to conserve his minutes and make sure that we didn't kind of put any additional stress on that knee. that he had an operation in. Sounds like he might have to have another operation on it this summer to kind of solve that ongoing issue with it. So I think that is important to note that Jesus's long term health is not a guarantee currently. So that is something that Havertz um, does factor into. And I also, kind of it is another reason why Havertz comes off as a winner for the season, which is, he's made it so that we don't have to go get an Osimhen necessarily. It'd still be great if we got one, but we can go get a Sesko and rely on Havertz next season as center forward. But now we come to losers on the season, which might be a more fun topic. Who did I go with first for winners? PME it was you, PME. So Abdul, I'll go with you first for the losers. Who is your loser from the 23-24 season?
My loser is Zinchenko. It's a weird one because in his first season, I really enjoyed his performances. I think there was a period around December to January, February where he was fantastic. And I think in his first season, obviously he was inverting next to like the DM, and he was effectively very, very important to us. So he missed quite a few games that season. I believe he only started about 26 games. So that means there's about 12 league games that he just didn't start in. And I think he only came off the bench once, which was, I think, against West Ham, where he came back from the World Cup. So yeah, as a result, he was so vital to us in the way that we play. I enjoyed the way we used him because he had kind of a bit of a freedom to roam. I remember that Everton game, I think, in March 2023, where he set up the Saka goal, and I went to that game live, and he just popped up on the right half space, even though he's a left back, and he just fizzed that ball into Saka. He was so crucial back then. But there were obviously quite a few concerns. Defensively, he's not great. I don't think he's quite as bad as people say. Like, he's very good at anticipating danger and nipping in to win the ball. He's quite good in the air, weirdly. Although he does lose the flat of the ball a few times, especially this season. But the big issue, I think, is that this season we haven't needed his influence as much in the season that just finished. And I think he can tell that. So whenever he does play, especially in the second half of the season, he was, I think, trying to get on the ball quite constantly, even when he didn't need to, kind of fizz the ball forward when he doesn't need to. And I think he's just trying to regain that, that stature that he had in his first season. It just wasn't working for him. It's not a case of the left back shouldn't invert. It's more so the case of the fact that he's not really someone who's going to be quite dynamic, going forward. If you look at White, there was a few games where he was inverting a little bit and then going to right centre back and then going forward to support Saka. Sometimes even just being out wide instead of Saka, who's moved inside. White is someone who's like very flexible. He can do quite a lot of things. And Zinchenko, he does one thing. He does it relatively well, but he does one thing only, which is to invert. And when we haven't needed him to do that specific role, Kivio hasn't done that specific role. Tomiyasu doesn't really do that specific role. He does invert sometimes, but that's more situational rather than constantly and only in that way. And I think his influence on the team has waned significantly this season. And obviously now he's been linked with move out to Bayern Munich, for example. So yeah, his stock has taken a massive hit this season. I don't think he's a bad player, absolutely not. It's just the fact that what the team requires now is something different, which is a bit ironic because when he first came in, the team needed a change, and he was that change. And then now we're asking the team to evolve again. And it's a bit unfortunate because I feel like a lot of Arsenal players have needed to evolve very quickly or haven't evolved quick enough with the team. So if you look at like Sambi, for example, like I actually do quite like Sambi. But unfortunately, he joined 2021 and he was quite good early on. But then right now we're in 2024 and the team has completely moved past him and he's going to leave it at the end of the season. That doesn't mean he's a bad player. It just means the teams in a different way. And I hope that in the direction that we go in, hopefully we get if he takes Zinchenko out, I like a left back who's more traditional, can like overlap forward, support the winger more often. If they have like real running power, they can be like tuck in as a left centre back and then go forward, kind of like White does. But I think we need that kind of thrust, that dynamic thrust going forward from left back. And Zinchenko, fortunately, like his strengths are inverting and crossing from the half space. And unfortunately, we need more, and he can't provide that. So he's the loser of the season.
Yeah. So that is the guy who is top of my list for loser of the season. So I think that's a great pick. And you're right. I think, last season when it was the Zinchenko party pivot, that was it was amazing, right? It worked to perfection, allowed us to progress the ball really well, allowed Xhaka and Odegaard to kind of get forward, be more involved in the attack, crash the box. But this season, we signed Rice, and it's really impacted what we do on that left-hand side, right? Because Rice likes to occupy kind of that left half space. Um, so it's kind of the same position that Zinchenko likes to invert from. So it's really difficult to play those two together, which means that you either have to play an overlapping left back, or you have to invert the right back and play a back three whenever you have Rice on the pitch, among other options. So I think that has kind of affected Zinchenko's ability to be involved. I mean, he still averaged the most progressive passes and passes into the final third on the team. So it's not like his ability has gone down or anything. Like you said, he just doesn't fit into the side like he used to, which is fine, right? It happens. But yeah, I think Zinchenko also, the main, not the main, I don't want to say the main, but probably the most robust quality of this current team is its defensive and out of possession strength, right? And I think a lot of times when Zinchenko was thrown into these situations where we had to defend, where we had to do a good job out of possession, he was kind of found wanting, right? There's several games where he didn't hold the line with everyone else in terms of the offside line. There's games where he didn't really know where to be whenever Gabriel had the ball. I can think of two instances off the top of my head where Zinchenko got in the way of a Gabriel pass in our penalty area and it led to a goal. So he just looks like a fish out of water sometimes in this team. So I could see him leaving, especially like you said, Abdul, with the interest from Bayern Munich being reported. I think this might be a really organic time for him to, leave with our thanks for his contributions, and we can at least recoup the money that we paid for him. But PME, what do you make of Zinchenko as a loser on the season, and do you agree?
I think for me, he's unanimously the loser of the season. Like, I've been thinking about this as we've been talking and listening to Abdul, and I don't think you can really think of another player that comes close to Zinchenko as a loser. I think the way I look at it is that you look at the team sheet when it gets tweeted at whatever o'clock, and you look at it and you're like, oh, Zinchenko's playing. And that's the feeling you get now when you see Zinchenko's name on the team sheet. You're like, oh, great, he's playing. And it really, like, I know this is called losers, but this is almost like, for me, quite sad, because last season he was great, I think, for the most part. He had obviously some really horrendous moments, but all in all, I thought he had a really fun, good season. But now, I mean, it's just a 180. I mean, he was so bad this season. There's so many moments where you look at it and you're just like, this is bad. Like, a Man City, I hate, obviously, he came from Man City, whatever, but, like, for a player to come from Man City like Zinchenko, who's, done many good moments for them, had many great moments, and he's just been so bad this season. It's just amazed me. I mean, I was trying to think of another name, and I've got two names that would be a little bit less than Zinchenko, but I think have to be considered. The first one for me is Fabio Vieira. I think the reason why I would say he's a loser of the season is that I think there's more to show. I think he's a better player than the season has presented us with. I think if he was to leave on loan, which is my prediction for the summer, to Marseille, I think he'll have a really great season. I think he's a really talented player, but he just hasn't really shown it enough. He's had little bits and bobs and stuff, and it's just not been enough for me. I think the red card at home to Burnley was kind of like his season's done, and it pretty much was, and it was quite sad. And then the other one I've got is Martinelli. Unfortunately, I think again it's an expectation thing. I think we all looked at the season as like he's going to do. This is the season he beats Firmino's record. He was so close last season, got injured from that Caicedo challenge, and that was my expectation. Like he's going to come close to that. He's going to do it, and he was poor. He had a poor season, and great players have poor seasons, unfortunately. And that for me, that was the case. Like I think it's just like it is what it is. So I don't want to be harp too much on him. But we expected a lot more, and I think he's had again moments where he's been really great and done some good stuff. But overall, I think if you was to judge the season, I mean, if you compare Saka to Martinelli, the world's apart right now, and I think that's a slight concern going into next season. But I think he'll be fine. I think it's just for me, it was a hiccup, if anything. I think Smith Rowe, you could argue, is a loser this season, but I think that's quite harsh in a way because I think he's not played enough to say that, and I think that's been more of choice. So that would be a harsh one. But for me, if I was to say to others that are not Zinchenko, because I think again he is the loser of the season without a doubt. Martinelli and Vieira, I think you'd have to consider. I mean, even Partey as well. Partey's he's got to go. He's got to go. That's it. At the end of the day, he's got to go.
Yeah, I think the Vieira ones. I mean, they're all true. I will say the Vieira one I think is very interesting because one person I considered saying as a winner on the season is actually Ethan Nwaneri because of the fact that Smith Rowe seems to. I don't want to say fallen out of favor because Arteta keeps on saying he wants to play him, and he did feature a little bit over the course of the run-in. But Smith Rowe clearly isn't an important part of this side. Fabio Vieira, this season was a wash for him. And so it's really interesting if you're keeping an eye on Nwaneri, he's really impressing for the under-21s. He is killing it for the I think it's the England U21 team, right? That he's playing for right now.
I think it's the under-17s.
Is it the under-17s? Okay.
It might be. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, mate.
So he's playing for the under-17s for England, and he's just been smashing in goals. And I think every Arsenal fan at this point knows that he's probably the biggest thing to be coming out of the academy since Saka. We'll see if maybe he can even surpass that level. So there very clearly is going to be a purposefully constructed route into the first team for Nwaneri, and he does play in similar positions to Vieira and Smith Rowe. So I think kind of watching how Vieira and Smith Rowe's stock has fallen this season, I think that bodes well for the likelihood that we'll see Nwaneri play this coming season in the first team. I don't think he's going to be getting like 1,000 minutes or anything, but I think he'll get some time here and there. Abdul, what do you make of those losers?
Yeah, I mean, they are contenders. Obviously, like we all unanimously agree that it's Zinchenko. But obviously, like Vieira's had a tough season. I think one thing we actually forget is that after that red card, he actually had an injury. I think a groin injury, which kept him out for about 2 or 3 months. And I think when he came back, I think the team was just in a groove that maybe Arteta wasn't willing to use him as much. I do feel he should have used him a few more times. And there was definitely room for him to start a game here or there. But yeah, honestly, it's also weird because he started the season really well. Vieira, he had the cameo against Fulham, Manchester United. Starting against Everton was really good. But I have high hopes for him. I think he's a very talented player, like PME said. I think that next season, hopefully, he will be able to play a lot more games and be, like an extra squad player rather than just a fringe player. But yeah, I do have high hopes for him. I'm not willing to give up on him at all. And yeah, but this season definitely was a step back for him. Definitely with Martinelli as well. There's quite a lot of reasons why he's had injuries. The team around him has changed quite a lot. He's a lot more isolated this past season. And also, like, he's got a different dynamic with whether it was Havertz there or Rice there. In midfield, where there was like Zinchenko or Kivio or Tomiyasu left back. I don't think there's been a lot of continuity and stability in the team. There was for a brief moment with Kivio, and Martinelli was actually in pretty good form before the injury against Sheffield United. And then he came back from the injury, and Arteta was obviously managing his fitness for the Champions League. He got knocked out, and Trossard was in good form. But I don't think it's a case of he's just not as good as people think. He's a terrific player, and I think he'll bounce back next season. But we really do need to clarify left back, centre mid, get an attacker, and I think we'll see the best of him again, and maybe even better. But he's definitely taken a hit this season, but it's not a severe hit. He still had some good moments, some great games here or there. So it's not something I'm worried about, because I believe we'll buy some players to fix those problems, those little holes in the squad. So Smith Rowe, I feel like it's harsh to call him a loser, because in a way this season was better than last season, because last season he played less, and he was out for like half the season effectively, and the second half of last season he barely played, whereas at least this season he played a little bit. But him and Vieira are two players that don't play enough, and either some decision has to be made, which is they play more games, or maybe Smith Rowe leaves. I'm loath to, again, I said before, I'm loath to letting him go, but with him, I do feel that he needs to be utilised a lot more. Like, he's got qualities that the team lacks, and if Arteta does not truly feel he's in these plans, then sell him, and I can reluctantly accept that. But he needs to make a decision this summer, which is use him more, because I think him and Vieira combined played about 1,100 minutes, which is, even for just one of them to play 1,000 minutes, would have been mildly acceptable. I think Trossard played about 1,400 minutes, and that's mainly because in the first half of the season he was coming off the bench so much. With Vieira and Smith Rowe, they played about, I think, 500 minutes each, or 400 and 500 minutes, 600 minutes, which is nowhere near enough. And that has to change next season. Either play them more, or sign someone who can play those 1,000 plus minutes. So that's a big decision for the club to make.
Yep. No, I think all those guys have have watched their stocks fall this season. I mean, I don't Vieira, Smith Rowe, I'm on the same page as you guys. Party, I don't want to even talk about. I think we should have gotten rid of Party last summer. There is one guy who we have not mentioned yet in terms of losers, and that's Reece Nelson. I think Reece Nelson is arguably I don't mean to call him a loser per se, but arguably the biggest loser on the team this season. When he scored that screamer against Bournemouth at the last second last season to win us the match, I thought we were going to see him turn the corner in terms of his involvement in the team. He wasn't injured this season. Nelson has kind of historically struggled with injuries throughout his career. Didn't have an injury this season. Still only played 729 minutes. And even at the end of the season, when Saka was very clearly struggling through injury, when he missed the last game of the season, Arteta was still starting other people at right wing over Nelson. He was starting Jesus over him. I think he started Vieira over him at one point. He started Trossard over him at right wing when Saka wasn't available. And it's just become very clear that Nelson is surplus to requirements, and we gave him a long-term agreement. We put him on £100,000 a week for no reason. And so Nelson is just a guy I feel very bad for these days because, um, he came out of Hale End as a supremely gifted, talented, exciting player, and his career has very much stalled now. Um, so yeah, so I think I'll offer up Nelson as a loser, and before we get out of here, PME, what are your thoughts?
With Nelson, it's hard for me because I just think, wow, you could say he's a loser. I mean, the big reason why I said Smith Rowe is because I think he didn't really justify he's going to be sold, I think. And I think he didn't do enough to not get that label, unfortunately. With Nelson, it just feels like, he's a bench player. Whether he's accepted that or not, I don't know, like from within. But, there was a big talk about Brighton maybe last year when he was potentially a free agent for Nelson. So I don't know. Maybe he could go in the summer. Surprise name, maybe he could go. But I could see your point 100% with Nelson. I think he should have kicked on from the Bournemouth game, and he's not a bad player. He really isn't. Like he could definitely go to like a top 10 team, top 9 team, and probably do quite well in some role. But for some reason, it just hasn't happened. And a big thing for me in this summer is that Arteta. My big criticism of him as a manager, to be honest with you, is that I think he just doesn't trust his bench. So he either needs to develop that, which he really should anyway, or we get him a bench they can trust. And I think Nelson, to a degree, Eddie and Smith Rowe, he doesn't trust. It's as simple as that. He doesn't trust them. This is why Saka has played God knows how many games in a row. It's the biggest problem I think he has as a coach right now. One of the major hurdles, I think, one of his last major hurdles, besides winning some big trophies, that he really needs to go over, because Pep can just, the thing with Pep is that he can just throw whatever 11 really he wants to and win. I don't think Arteta can do that, and I think that's an experience thing. But I think it comes from not having the depth he wants to a degree, and I think that's the challenge for the summer, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, 100%. Abdul, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big fan of Reece since like his days in academy, and like you guys said, I thought after that Bournemouth game that would be like, the platform for him to go and play a bigger part. And this season he's gone backwards in terms of game time, in terms of end product as well. Like I think last season he scored a few goals off the bench, obviously Bournemouth, but also Forest, and he got some assists as well. And this season I think, I thought he didn't score in the Premier League, for example. He got I remember he got an assist against PSV actually, for Odegaard as well. So
yeah,
like he's played
one goal, 3 assists on the season.
Yeah, exactly, 1 goal, 3 assists. Yeah, so like it's a step backwards. I think the big thing is that last summer I actually really wanted him to stay, because I thought if you let him go on free, okay, but then that means you have to replace him. And I think the big problem this season is that, again, if he leaves this summer, fans will want the wingers to come in, but effectively they won't be replacing him. It's just going to be basically a new player, essentially, it's like a new position essentially, because he doesn't play games right now at right wing. He doesn't start many games. He only started 1 league game this season. So whoever we replace will, if they start 2 games, boom, like they've already eclipsed that. And I think that's the really unfortunate thing, is that if he leaves, it won't feel like the squad has lost a player, because he's not really been a part of the squad. But that's the feeling I had last summer, which was I would much rather keep him and use him more than let him go and then you spend like 40 million, 50 million on a winger to be a squad player. But now I'm feeling if we do get a winger to be a 40 million, 50 million squad player, fine. But I do feel Reece could have played definitely a bigger part. But wherever he goes, I'm going to be rooting for him, because he's got a lot of quality. he really loves the club, and he's someone that can revive his career somewhere else. But yeah, like it's a big shame really that he hasn't been able to play as much. But you know, it's just how it is, isn't it?
Yeah. That's excuse me. That's the thing. I still think Nelson's a great player. I think it's time he went somewhere else and spread his wings and showed us what he could do, even if it's not in an Arsenal shirt. So there you have it. Winners and losers. Let's put a bow on it here since we've been going for almost an hour and a half. But it's been so much fun having both of you guys on. PME, Abdul, thank you so much for joining, and hope to have you guys back on here when Sash is back.
I love it. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I've rambled to an audience. It's been a good time.
I've enjoyed this. Yeah, I feel like I rambled a bit, but I've enjoyed rambling. Like, I don't tend to just go on and on and on, but I've enjoyed. I mean, like, you two are my boys, so
I do it every day, mate. Honestly, don't worry.
I know, bro.
The best podcasts, I feel, like, lean into rambling about football.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being on here. I think there's just under 7,000 of you watching on all platforms. So I expect 7,000 new followers for PME at Marie Escobar PME. I expect 7,000 new followers for Abdul at Flaminiesta. I don't expect 7,000 followers for me, but if you want to, you can follow me at Shamsdale. Also follow the pod at This Week Arsenal. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. If you're watching on, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do leave that 5-star review. It really does help out. But we will be back with you next week. So until then, be a gooner, don't be a goon, and we will talk to you soon. Until then, take care and bye.
Maybe we'll have a good surprise for you.